Hi, welcome to our channel where we share the most intriguing stories. He came home to silence, mountains, and the promise of peace, only to find bulldozers tearing through his land, a forged signature, a stolen legacy, and one man ready to fight not with bullets, but with truth. Some wars don't end overseas, they just change their battlefield. I came back to Montana the way I always did after long trips, quietly, without announcements, letting the land tell me what I'd missed. The truck rolled past the old cattle gate just before dusk, the mountains bruised purple by the setting sun, the river running high from late spring melt. 10 days in Wyoming buying horses had left me tired in that clean, bone-deep way I remembered from deployments. Too much motion, too many people, not enough silence. My ranch was supposed to fix that. 1,800 acres of forest, hills, water, and stubborn land that didn't care who I was or what I'd done before I came back. I shut off the engine, sat there for a moment, and listened. Wind in the trees, a distant hawk. No engines, no voices. Exactly how it should be. I hadn't even finished unloading my bag when my phone rang. Walt's name came up on the screen. Walt was the kind of neighbor you only get in places like this. A third-generation farmer who knew the land better than maps ever could and minded his business unless something was truly off. When he called, it usually meant one of my fences was down or a bear had decided my pasture looked inviting. "Nathan," he said without preamble, "you buildin' something up north?" I leaned against the porch railing and frowned. "Up north, where?" "By the lake. That far section. Been seeing trucks, heavy ones. Figured you finally gave in and sold a piece." For a second, I honestly thought he was joking. I let out a short laugh. "I haven't sold a damn thing, Walt. And I'm not building anything." There was a pause on the line, the kind that carries weight. "Then you might want to go take a look." I didn't argue. I grabbed my keys, my drone, and a thermos I hadn't even had time to refill. The drive to the northern section took about 40 minutes if the road behaved, and closer to an hour if it didn't. Tonight, it behaved just enough to let my irritation simmer instead of boil. The farther I drove, the more wrong everything felt. Tire tracks where there shouldn't have been any. Fresh ruts cutting into old paths I hadn't used in years. The land looked disturbed, like a body that had been moved after death. I stopped at the ridge overlooking the lake and launched the drone. The screen came alive, and with it, the first real punch to the gut. Trees were gone. Not a few, dozens. A clearing the size of a football field sat where dense forest had been the last time I'd checked. Yellow machines crawled over bare earth like insects. Excavators, bulldozers, portable offices lined up in neat rows. Men in hard hats moved with purpose. And right there, stretched between two metal poles, was a banner flapping proudly in the wind. Silver Lake Resort, coming soon. Developer, Croft Construction. I remember thinking, very calmly, that this was either a mistake so big it bordered on performance art, or someone had decided my absence meant I didn't exist. I drove the rest of the way down in silence, parked at the edge of the site, and stepped out. The noise hit me first. Engines, metal, shouting. A foreman noticed me and walked over, clipboard in hand, smile already rehearsed. I asked him who authorized construction on this land. He didn't hesitate. He flipped open a folder and showed me permits, leases, contracts. All official, all stamped, all bearing my name. The signature was wrong. Not just slightly, laughably. Anyone who had ever seen my handwriting would know it. I told him to shut the site down. He shrugged, polite but firm, and said he had a contract and deadlines. If I had an issue, I should call the owner. So I did. Dwayne Croft answered on the third ring. His voice smooth, relaxed, the sound of a man standing on what he thought was solid ground. He called me Mr. Pierce, told me everything was legal, and suggested that if I disagreed, the courts were the proper venue. Until then, construction would continue. I stood there after the call ended, staring at machines chewing into land my grandfather had once fished, and realized something cold and simple. This wasn't a misunderstanding. This was a move. Calculated, confident, and timed for when they thought I was far enough away not to matter. I got back in my truck and drove home under a darkening sky, already knowing sleep wasn't going to be part of my night. By sunrise, I was already behind the wheel driving into town. I hadn't slept, spent most of the night pacing my living room, staring at old land deeds and muttering like a lunatic. It wasn't the first time someone tried to pressure me to sell, but forging my signature, building on my land without consent, that was a whole new level of arrogant. This wasn't some neighbor's fence creeping 6 inches past the line. This was a hostile takeover with paperwork and cement trucks. The county administrative building was a boxy thing. Tan brick, too many windows, always smelled like copier toner and stale coffee, the kind of place that prides itself on process and bureaucracy. I walked in, asked for land transfer records, and was directed to a desk run by a young clerk who looked barely old enough to vote. Her name tag read Ashley. She had a polite smile and absolutely no idea what kind of storm she was about to be dropped into. "I'm looking for records on parcel 73C, I told her, laying down my driver's license and original deed. "Should be listed under Nathan Pierce, northern boundary east of the lake," she typed, frowning at her screen. "Huh," she said. I hate that sound. It never leads to anything good. "What, huh?" I asked. "Well, it says that parcel was sold 3 months ago to a company called Silver Ridge Land, LLC. The transfer was notarized by a Gary Lomax. Sale price, $75,000. I let that number sit in the air a moment. 75 grand. That land, by conservative estimate, was worth over $1.2 million. You don't even get a crumbling riverside shack out here for $75,000. I leaned in. "Look at the signature on the seller line." She swiveled her screen toward me. I didn't need to study it. The signature looked like someone tried to forge mine after only ever seeing it scribbled on a beer receipt. "That's not my damn signature," I said. "And I sure as hell didn't sell my land to any shell company." Ashley looked nervous now. "Well, the paperwork says otherwise. I can get my supervisor." "Please do." 10 minutes later, I was in a small office with an older man named Bricker, who smelled like menthols and had that worn-down county official look. He listened as I laid it all out. My trip, the construction site, the forged lease, the fake sale. He pulled the documents himself. "Yep, signed by a Gary Lomax," he said, tapping the notary stamp. "He's a local attorney, does a lot of work with HOAs. Kind of a fixture around here." "I want to file a fraud complaint," I said. He nodded slowly. "You can. But I have to tell you, these things take time. You'll need to lawyer up, court order to void the deed. Might take months, maybe years. In the meantime, if they keep building—" I didn't say anything. I just sat there, jaw tight. Then Bricker frowned. "Funny thing, though, the deed transfer was entered by one of our clerks, Shelley Morgan. She doesn't usually handle large parcels, mostly mobile homes and easement disputes. I'll flag this." I stood up, thanked him, and left before I lost my temper. On the way to my truck, my phone buzzed. It was RJ, a local land surveyor and one of the few people in town I trusted with a GPS reading and a rifle. "Hey," he said, "you weren't in town last March, right?" "No, conference in Seattle. Why?" "I saw your name on a recorded survey. North parcel, dated March 19th. Thing is, I saw you that day on Instagram. Your buddy posted photos from the conference. Same damn date. How'd you sign a land transfer and do a seminar in Seattle at the same time? You telling me what I already know, RJ? Or are you about to tell me something I don't?" "I'm telling you that they're sloppy. And I bet they're betting you don't have the stomach to fight it." I hung up and sat in my truck for a while, thinking, this wasn't just some overzealous HOA nonsense. This was organized, calculated. They didn't think I'd catch it in time, or worse, they didn't think I could do anything, even if I did. I started making a list, documents to pull, people to talk to, photos to print, calls to make, and then I made the most important call of the day. I didn't call just any lawyer. I called Marcus James, the closest thing I had to a brother, and also, incidentally, the Attorney General of the state of Montana. We'd served together overseas, 2 tours in Iraq. He was a sharpshooting lieutenant with a law degree in his back pocket, always quoting statutes between firefights. I was the field surgeon patching everyone up, including him once when a sniper put a hole in his shoulder in Fallujah. 25 years later, he'd gone full justice crusader, cleaning up corruption across the state. We talked every couple of months, mostly to check in or mock each other's hairlines. But this time, there was no humor in my voice. He picked up on the second ring. "Pierce thought you were in Wyoming." "I got back yesterday. We've got a problem." I laid it out for him, short, clean, no drama. The forged documents, the fake deed, the active construction on land I never sold. There was a pause, a long one. "You're telling me someone forged your signature, transferred 300 acres, and broke ground before you even knew?" That's exactly what I'm telling you. Jesus, he muttered. Who? Dwayne Croft, Croft Construction. He's also president of the Silver Ridge Estates HOA. I've turned that asshole down 3 times when he tried to buy that north parcel. I could almost hear Marcus putting on his mental armor. You have proof. I've got the real deed. Time-stamped photos, travel records, GPS logs, witness statements, a fake-ass signature that looks like it was written by a drunk raccoon, and now a land transfer signed while I was in Seattle, giving a keynote with you-know-who watching. I've got enough proof to wallpaper your office. Another pause, shorter this time. Then, send me everything, now. My team's mobile tomorrow. We'll drive out and take a look. I want crime scene techs on site and the chain of custody airtight. You're not dealing with a zoning issue. This is criminal fraud, real estate theft, federal level. He stopped. You okay, man? I'm fine. That was a lie. I was tired. I was furious. And I was calculating. All right, Marcus said. Sit tight. Keep your head down. Don't threaten anyone and don't shoot anyone. No promises on the second one. Pierce. I said no promises. He sighed. See you tomorrow. I spent the rest of the day assembling the packet. Printed everything. Scanned backups, made copies of everything I'd collected from the county. I added GPS data from my truck and drone footage from the previous night. For good measure, I wrote a timeline, hour by hour, of where I was during the supposed land sale. It wasn't just airtight, it was bulletproof. At sunset, I drove out to the North Ridge again, stayed in the shadows, and watched them work. 50 men, maybe more, moving with the mechanical precision of a well-funded project. Dwayne wasn't there. Probably off shaking investor hands or measuring yacht sizes, but I knew he'd be back. He was too proud of this scam not to show it off. When I got home, I poured myself 2 fingers of bourbon and sat on the porch. The mountains had gone blue-black. Coyotes sang somewhere on the east side. I watched the wind ripple across the hills and thought about the people I'd buried who'd never made it back from sand and smoke and bullets. I didn't survive all that to get robbed by some suit with a pen. Next morning, I was up before dawn. The coffee hadn't even finished brewing when I saw dust trails on the road. 3 SUVs, dark and unmarked, followed by a pair of county sheriff vehicles and a state forensic van. They were early. Good. I walked down to the gate as the convoy pulled in. The lead SUV stopped, and Marcus stepped out wearing jeans, a leather jacket, and the badge of the highest-ranking lawman in Montana clipped to his belt. He grinned. You still make your coffee strong enough to strip paint? Damn right, I said. And you're gonna need it. Behind him, agents fanned out. Camera gear, evidence bags, laptops, portable scanners. The sheriff's deputies stayed close, eyes already tracking toward the tree line. Marcus walked up beside me and clapped a hand on my shoulder. Let's go take your land back. We arrived at the north parcel just after 8. The dirt road had fresh tracks from trucks and machinery, the morning sun throwing long shadows across the ruts. Dust hung in the air like smoke after a firefight. At the top of the hill, we parked and stepped out. From there, you could see the whole operation, massive, fast, and loud. Construction crews were already at work, hammering, pouring concrete, moving steel beams. An excavator dug into the earth like it was racing a deadline. A group of men in hard hats stood near the banner, Silver Lake Resort, coming soon. Among them, I spotted the man himself, Dwayne Croft. He looked exactly like the kind of guy who built overpriced suburbs for out-of-staters. Perfect hair, designer sunglasses, button-down shirt, too clean for a real job. He was talking animatedly to a group of investors, gesturing toward the lake like he owned the view. Marcus adjusted his jacket and turned to his team. Phones off, body cams on. We're going in. The convoy moved like a tactical unit. 3 agents took point, 2 deputies fanned out wide, and Marcus and I walked straight down the hill. We didn't sneak. We didn't yell. We just walked. Deliberate, heavy-footed, law-riding shotgun. It took a few seconds for anyone to notice. Then one of the workers stopped, shouted something. Heads turned. The noise of machines didn't stop, but the rhythm broke. A ripple of confusion spread. Croft saw us last. At first, his smile didn't fade. He probably assumed it was a zoning check or permit drop-in. Then he saw Marcus. And the badge. That was when the smile broke. I'll admit, I enjoyed that moment more than I should have. Marcus raised his voice loud enough to cut through diesel engines and steel. Everyone step away from machinery and cease all work. This is a state-led criminal investigation. You are trespassing on private property and are subject to detainment if you fail to comply. That got their attention. The excavator cut off with a hydraulic hiss. Foreman dropped his clipboard. The cement mixer rumbled to a stop. Silence rolled across the site like a storm front. Croft stepped forward, composed, but I could see the stiffness in his walk. "What's the meaning of this?" he demanded, voice tight. "You can't just walk onto an active work site." Marcus held up a hand, badge clearly visible. "Dwayne Croft, you are under investigation for criminal conspiracy, real estate fraud, forgery, and unlawful construction on private land. I have permits. I have a lease. Everything was approved by the county. And every one of those documents is under suspicion of being forged, falsified, or fraudulently obtained," Marcus interrupted, his voice sharp. "You'll have a chance to explain yourself in court." Croft turned to me. "Is this your idea of a joke, Pierce? You bring the Attorney General out here to make a scene?" I didn't flinch. "This is your scene, Dwayne? You built it. I'm just here for the demolition." One of Marcus's agents stepped forward, handing Croft a sealed folder. "Warrant to seize all construction equipment, digital records, and physical documentation on site," Marcus said. "Every crew member will be questioned. If they resist, they'll be arrested." A heavy silence followed. For a second, I thought Croft might try to argue, but instead, he turned, fast, toward his SUV. Big mistake. 2 deputies moved immediately. "Hands where we can see them." Croft ignored them and reached for the door handle. A second later, one of the agents took him down with a clean shoulder tackle. Dust flew. Croft hit the ground hard, face in the dirt. Arms twisted behind him as handcuffs clicked into place. Investors stared in stunned silence. One of them, a man in an expensive linen shirt and deck shoes, muttered, "What the hell is going on?" I turned to them. "You invested in a resort built on stolen land. That lakefront view? That's mine. You were conned." Another man looked pale. "I wired in $400,000 last week." "Then you might want to talk to your lawyer, and fast." One of the workers tried to start an excavator. Marcus raised his voice again. "Any operator attempting to move equipment will be detained." "You've all been warned." The guy hesitated, then climbed down with his hands up. Within 30 minutes, the entire site was locked down. Crews were being interviewed in small groups. Digital files from on-site laptops were being cloned. A drone team arrived to map the area. It was surgical, precise, and relentless. Marcus didn't miss a step. I walked the perimeter with one of the deputies, pointing out where the tree line had been before they cleared it. He shook his head. "They bulldozed half a forest. How the hell did they think no one would notice?" "Because they thought I'd never check," I said. Back at the main clearing, Marcus was reviewing the forged lease agreement the foreman had shown me the day before. It had my name printed cleanly across the bottom with a signature that looked like someone had copied it from memory with a crayon. He held it up and gave me a look. "You sign this with your foot?" "Left hand." "While being electrocuted," I said. He chuckled, then nodded toward the state crime techs bagging documents. "We've got at least 3 felonies here already, more depending on what we find in Croft's offices." As if on cue, one of the agents walked over. "Sir, we've started the search at Croft Construction HQ. His office safe had $200,000 in cash and a set of backup drives labeled with parcel IDs. Looks like he kept records." "Of course he did," Marcus muttered. "Guys like him always do. Arrogance leaves a paper trail." Just before noon, clouds started gathering over the mountains. A storm was building. Montana spring weather liked to change the mood without warning. I looked up, watching the sky churn. Then my phone buzzed. It was Ray Tomlin. He was one of my oldest local contacts, used to be a forestry supervisor, helped me with erosion management last year. He'd walked my land more than most, helped me cut lines through dense timber. "Nathan," he said, voice low. "I need to see you, in private, tonight." "Why?" "I think I screwed up. Bad. And I owe you the truth." My stomach tightened. "You home around 7?" he asked. "I'll be waiting." Ray showed up just after 7. Old red pickup. Dented fender, tailgate held by a bungee cord. Nothing unusual, except this time he didn't honk or wave like he normally did. He parked halfway up the drive and sat there for a minute before killing the engine. I stepped off the porch, watching him closely. He climbed out slowly, his hat pulled low. The man looked older than he had a week ago, like whatever weight he was carrying had started pressing into his spine. "Coffee?" I asked. "Something stronger." We sat on the porch. I poured 2 fingers of bourbon for each of us. Ray didn't say anything for a while, just stared out at the ridge like it might tell him what to say. Finally, he set the glass down and cleared his throat. "I messed up, Nate. Real bad." I didn't say anything. I didn't know how deep it went. Honest to God, I didn't. But I helped them, Croft's people. That hit harder than I expected. Ray had been around since before I bought the ranch. Hell, he knew my grandfather, helped me mark old cattle paths, set boundary markers, run burn checks. The man knew my land better than half the surveyors in the county. "How?" I asked. He took off his hat and ran a hand through thinning gray hair. "Few months back, some fella from Croft Construction, project manager, I think, called me. Said they were prepping to build out by the lake, and they needed eyes on the ground. Said you were on board, but traveling a lot. Wanted help figuring out terrain access, where to run equipment, where signal was weak. Offered me $5,000 just to walk the land and tell 'em where not to get stuck. Sounded shady, but hell, I was behind on taxes. Figured it was some side hustle, maybe a handshake deal they hadn't filed yet. You thought I sold them land and didn't say a damn word." He winced. I told myself it wasn't my place to ask. Ray reached into his coat and pulled out a flash drive, wrapped in a small plastic bag. I recorded a couple of the calls just for my own ass covering. Don't even know if they're useful. But there's names, dates, locations. I took it. It was heavier than it should have been. "I'm sorry," he said again. "I should have told you sooner. I should have trusted my gut." I nodded. "You're telling me now." That's something. Ray left not long after. Didn't try to make excuses. I respected that. I emailed the contents of the drive to Marcus before midnight. An hour later, he replied, "Your friend might have just cracked this whole thing open. Sit tight." Next morning, we were back at the site. It was officially shut down. Equipment parked and locked, yellow tape across every trailer. The air was heavy, humid, thunderheads stacked along the western edge of the sky. One of the crime techs met us at the gate. "We've cloned the laptops, dumped the email servers, and found at least a dozen signed contracts with identical forged signatures. Yours, 2 other landowners, even someone deceased." I frowned. "Deceased?" "Yeah, some guy named Walter Kessler. Died in Arizona last year. His Montana parcel got sold a month ago. Same notary, same buyer. Silver Ridge Land, LLC. Jesus. Marcus joined us a few minutes later, holding a file thick with printed emails. Ray's audio matches up with internal comms from Croft's office. They were building a list of targets. Absentee owners, folks with low activity on record, veterans who hadn't updated titles since the 80s. "How many?" I asked. 6 so far. Total of around 1,200 acres. "We're still checking." He glanced up at the sky. "We need to move fast. Storm's coming in hard. And there's one more thing." He was interrupted by a shout from one of the deputies near the equipment trailers. "Fire." We turned. A thick, black column of smoke had erupted from behind the eastern tree line. The wind, which had been low all morning, suddenly kicked up. Lightning must have hit a dry patch, maybe an old pile of brush left behind. Either way, the forest was catching. Within 10 minutes, flames had reached the edge of the staging zone. Wind drove it toward the trailer where the seized evidence was being processed. Laptops, hard drives, printed documents, and Ray's flash drive backup. Marcus barked orders, and I didn't wait. I sprinted for the trailer with 2 deputies on my heels. The fire crackled like a freight train, embers flying sideways. Smoke clawed at my lungs. We reached the door just as the outer plastic trim started to melt. Inside, I found the metal case holding the electronics. It was hot to the touch, but not scorched yet. I hauled it out, one deputy covering me with a wet tarp while the other cleared the path. We made it out just as the trailer caught. 1 minute later, and everything would have been ash. The fire crews arrived soon after, cutting a line along the ridge, back-burning the east slope. They stopped it before it jumped to the main forest, but we lost 2 trailers and a power generator. Later that afternoon, sitting on the back of a paramedic truck with an oxygen mask in hand, I asked Marcus, "You think that fire was natural?" He didn't answer right away. "We'll find out, but Croft's people had a lot to lose. And a whole lot to burn." I looked down at the case in my lap. "It's not lost," I said. "Not this time." By the time the smoke cleared, so had any doubt about the scale of the operation. What started as one forged deed had unraveled into a statewide land theft scheme with a paper trail longer than the Yellowstone River. Marcus's office was running hot. Deputies were cycling through depositions like clockwork. And Dwayne Croft. He was rotting in a county cell, having a very different kind of meeting schedule than he was used to. But the real cleanup was just beginning. That same evening, Marcus called me over to the mobile operations tent they'd set up just south of the lake. He looked tired in the way only prosecutors do, like he'd spent the whole day juggling evidence, egos, and bureaucracy. "You're going to want to see this," he said, flipping open a laptop. The screen showed a spreadsheet, parcel numbers, owner names, and sales statuses. I recognized some of the names: retired vets, widows, people who'd left Montana decades ago but held onto land out of principle or family pride. Each row showed a transfer to a shell company: Silver Ridge Land, LLC, Western Equity Holdings, Lakefront Futures, Inc. Croft used at least 5 fronts to launder the property, Marcus said, all tied to him or his family through proxy owners. Fake signings, phony appraisals, complicit notaries, and at least one mole inside the county recorder's office. Let me guess, Shelley Morgan. Bingo! She'd been arrested earlier that day at her desk. Claimed she didn't know the documents were forged, but bank records showed a $10,000 deposit into her personal account, followed by 2 trips to Vegas and 1 sudden car upgrade. Her boyfriend worked for Croft Construction. The web just kept expanding. Marcus handed me a sealed envelope, search warrants for Croft's main office and his home. "You want to be there when we serve them?" "Damn right I do." We rolled up to the Croft Construction HQ just past noon the next day. It was a sleek, glass-fronted building, tucked between a real estate office and a private golf club. For a guy pretending to be a small-town developer, Dwayne had a taste for luxury. Agents entered through the front door like a battering ram. Employees were lined up and removed one by one, hands up, questions flying. The receptionist cried. The CFO tried to slip out the side door, didn't make it 10 feet before a deputy had her on the pavement. Inside, it was worse than expected. Filing cabinets stuffed with shadow contracts. External hard drives labeled with code names like SLR-BACKUP and WESTDEALPHASE3. One drawer held nothing but old notary seals, 6 of them, all forged. Another held burner phones, all factory wiped. And then, the jackpot, a detailed list of vulnerable parcels, including notes like owner MIA, elderly, low surveillance, and no family nearby. I stared at it for a long time. "These aren't just crimes," I said. "This was hunting." Marcus nodded grimly. He targeted people who couldn't fight back, people off the grid, dead men, widows. You were the one he missed, the landowner who came home. We moved to Croft's house next. Gated community, triple-car garage, security cameras everywhere. Inside, the arrogance was turned up to 11. Marble floors, abstract art, wine cellar with nothing under $200 a bottle. And upstairs, hidden in a walk-in closet, we found something that made Marcus whistle. A literal bag of cash, over $400,000 in neatly bundled stacks. Next to it, a ledger. Payouts to various consultants, including Gary Lomax, the crooked notary, and several unnamed county contacts. When we got back to the command tent, news had already broken statewide. Marcus's office released a press statement outlining the scope of the investigation: real estate fraud, document forgery, conspiracy, and grand larceny, with total land values exceeding $6 million. The headline read like something out of a mafia documentary. That night, I got a call from one of the investors I'd seen on site, the guy in the linen shirt. "Mr. Pierce," he said, his voice tight, "I just want to say I had no idea. I was told the land was clean, the paperwork solid, my firm's pulling out of the project, we're filing for fraud recovery. Then I'd start with your due diligence department," I said, "and maybe get yourself a new lawyer." To their credit, several investors turned state's witnesses, offering internal memos, email chains, and payment receipts in exchange for leniency. One even handed over a full financial breakdown of a second project Croft had been planning to launch next year on another stolen parcel. The dominoes fell fast. Lomax, the notary, was picked up, leaving a private airstrip. In his trunk, 2 suitcases and a passport in someone else's name. He didn't even ask why he was being arrested. He just said, "How bad is it?" "Federal bad," the agent answered. The next morning, Marcus got the green light from the feds. They were stepping in. Asset seizures began within 24 hours. Croft's homes, accounts, vehicles, and even a private island he'd bought in Canada using one of the shell companies. His wife filed for divorce before lunch. It was brutal, and it was beautiful. But for me, the most satisfying moment came when I walked back out to the north parcel with my original deed in one hand and a fresh legal order in the other. The land was quiet now, no engines, no shouting, just the wind through the trees trying to grow back, and the lake reflecting a sky finally free of construction dust. Mine again. The official paperwork restoring ownership came in a thick white envelope, hand-delivered by a deputy with a grin on his face. He didn't even knock, just held it out like a trophy when I stepped onto the porch that morning. "You planning to frame it?" he asked. "Damn right I am." Inside was the court order, full and unconditional reversion of title for Parcel 73C to Nathan R. Pierce, effective immediately, fraudulent deed annulled, associated transactions nullified. A copy had already been filed with the county and forwarded to the state land registry. It was over, legally at least. I spent the next few days doing something I hadn't done in months, walking the land, boundary to boundary. I brought my dog, Whiskey, a stubborn old mutt who still barked at deer like he had a shot at catching them. We walked through the scorched edge of the fire line, where blackened trees leaned like silent witnesses, and down to the lakeshore, where construction debris still littered the sand. I picked up a piece of rebar, thick and rusted, and hurled it into the water. The splash echoed like punctuation. Then came the restitution hearings. Croft's accounts were seized, and from the frozen assets, the court ordered partial restitution to investors and landowners. Not a full recovery. Some of the money was gone, funneled into offshore holdings or laundered through fake companies, but enough to make a dent. I received a check for $180,000 in damages, compensation for land disruption, ecological impact, and loss of use. Marcus pushed hard for the ruling. The judge agreed, citing the flagrant abuse of trust and process in Croft's actions. 12 other landowners, many of them elderly, some already living out of state, were tracked down, their parcels restored. I watched one of them, a Korean War vet named Elmer, break down over Zoom when the judge read the decision. He hadn't set foot on his land in 30 years, but he'd kept the tax bills paid every damn year. And Croft had tried to steal it right out from under him. Justice hit different when you saw the relief on a man's face. Shelley Morgan took a plea deal, 4 years in a minimum security facility, and full forfeiture of her bonuses. Her boyfriend, who'd funneled intel from inside the assessor's office, got 5. Lomax folded fast and spilled every name he could remember. He lost his license, his bar membership, and his freedom. 8 years, no parole. But Dwayne Croft, he went to trial. Federal court. Multiple counts, wire fraud, land theft, document forgery, conspiracy, laundering. His defense tried to play the victim card, said he was misled by subordinates, that the documents appeared legitimate. The jury didn't buy it. Not when Marcus played Ray's audio recordings. Not when they saw the investor memos, and definitely not when they looked at the ledger marked targets most likely to overlook paperwork. 22 years. No parole. When the sentence was read, he didn't react. Just stood there like a man who still thought he'd be having lunch at his golf club by next week. After the sentencing, Marcus and I walked out of the courthouse together. He looked beat. 2 weeks of nonstop court, press conferences, and paperwork, but there was something relaxed in his shoulders I hadn't seen in a while. "That's a hell of a body count," he said. "Better than most of our deployments." He laughed. "Yeah, and a lot more paper." We stood in silence for a while on the steps, watching as the media circus packed up. "What's next for you?" he asked. "I've got a plan," I said. "Not for me. For the land." 1 year later, the north parcel looked nothing like it did the day Croft's bulldozers tore into it. The land had healed in places, slowly, patiently, as Montana land does. Saplings pushed through fire-scarred soil. Birds came back, nested in what branches remained. The lake, untouched by greed now, reflected skies that had finally stopped choking on dust. But the biggest change wasn't nature. It was people. Where the resort sign once stood, a new one hung on an old cedar post, carved by hand by a local vet named Ty. Lakefront Reclaim, camp for combat veterans. No fees, no suits, no bullshit. Yeah, that last part was mine. I used part of the restitution money and a good chunk of my own savings to start something that had been sitting in the back of my mind for years. A place for people like us, not just soldiers, but combat veterans. The ones who'd seen things that never quite left your bloodstream. People like Marcus, who walked into fire with a pen instead of a rifle. People like me, who had too many scars and not enough words for them. We built 6 cabins, a communal hall, a dock, and a riding trail that wound into the hills. My ranch hands helped with the fencing. Local contractors, some of whom had almost worked for Croft, volunteered to fix what their machines had started. They said it felt like redemption. I let them believe that. Maybe it was. Marcus came out for the opening weekend, still wearing that damn jacket with the scuffed badge clipped to the belt. He gave a short speech, shook hands with the first 10 vets to arrive, and stayed long enough to teach a class on how not to get sued while being right. Later, he and I sat on the dock with our feet in the water and 2 cold beers sweating in our hands. "You know," he said, "back in Fallujah, I wasn't sure I'd make it past 30. "Same," I said. "Hell, I wasn't sure you'd make it past that Iraqi poker game you tried to cheat in." He grinned. I maintain that was a misunderstanding in translation. "Sure you do." He leaned back, watching the clouds shift over the lake. "You saved my life once," he said, voice low. "Now I guess I saved yours." I looked out at the cabins where a dozen vets were laughing around a fire pit. "Yeah, I guess we're even." Then he added something I'd never forget. "Land's just dirt until someone fights for it. Then it becomes something more." He was right. What Croft tried to steal wasn't just property. It was place, identity, legacy, and what we built in its place wasn't revenge. It was reclamation. That night, I sat by the fire with a few of the new guys, Marine, 2 Army, 1 Navy, and an Air Force medic with eyes too old for his age. We talked. We didn't talk. We let the silence do most of the work. And when someone asked about the sign, I told them what I always would. They thought the owner was gone. They thought the law wouldn't come. They thought silence meant permission. I poked the fire with a stick and smiled. They were wrong.